Up. Here we are. What's up, everybody? My name's Indy, and the gentleman sitting right next to me is Mr. Jay Powell, and this is Indie Game Business. Today we have our special guest, Dr. Chris Bartel, and we're going to talk about some cool stuff. Griefing in video games? I've never done that.
Morality and ethics.
Morality and ethics.
Yeah.
What are those exactly?
Somebody has some somewhere.
I mean, it's a video game. It's digital things. Right. Who cares if they die?
And to be clear, we're discussing the morality and ethics in the games, not whether or not games are morality. It's moral and ethically inclined.
Talking about like the player's actions in games.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Is it wrong for me to do something in a game? Even if it's like a single player game where nobody else is harmed, is it ever wrong for me to do something bad in a game?
Hell yeah. Like really
I mean, it probably depends on what religion, because in some religions, isn't it even bad to just think about doing something bad?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, that's a point. So I'm a philosophy professor. I apologize if I'm going to be boring, but it's something that St. Augustine talked about like centuries ago. This like anxiety about having immoral thoughts he worried about. I don't think we need to really worry about that, but some people do.
Right.
Yeah.
Some people have.
So you've actually been doing research into this, and there's a book coming out in August, but give us a little bit of the backstory. Tell us, what inspired you to get doing this, and, what have you learned along the way, and then we can dive in from there, because I don't have...
Cool. Wait, I want to guess. He was like destroying stuff in single-player games, and then was like, why do I like this so much?
The weird thing was, it wasn't why did I like it so much, but there are these, strange cases where I try to do something in a game and I don't like it and it freaks me out. And then I stopped and thought, well, why should I care? It's all fiction anyways. It doesn't matter.
That was a turning point for me. That exact thought was a turning point for me.
Yeah, it's weird. The game was Bioshock. It was when I was playing Bioshock. I can't harvest the little sisters. No matter how many times I play the game, I can't do it. Like, I sat down once thinking, I'm a good researcher. I need to research, how we make choices in games. So I sat down once, was like, this time I'm going to harvest all the little sisters. And when I got to it, I just couldn't do it. And that's the thing that really started me thinking, like, why would it matter? It's fiction anyways, but sometimes I feel bad about it. Maybe I'm oversensitive. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's like when we had breakfast the other week. I've been playing Civilization since the very first Civilization, and I can't ever bring myself to start nuking people, even when I know that's what I need to do to win.
Yeah, I did that once. I did it once to see like how does the mechanic work, and then afterwards I kind of felt icky about it. Yeah. I nuked a whole city. What's my problem?
That's a big doctoral word right there. Icky.
Icky, yes. Yeah, I learned that in grad school. So I got started with this. I've been playing games since my parents bought me that Atari 2600 back in 1982. And as an academic, I feel like out of these decades of playing games, I should make something of it. Like I should research this. So over the years, I don't know how many things that I've killed, how many, aliens and orcs and splicers and darkspawn. And in games, I've killed lots of people too, and some of those people deserved it, but some of them really didn't. And it's those kind of cases that made me wonder, why do I do this, and why am I interested? Like, imagine you meet somebody and the first thing they tell you is, I like to spend, 12 hours a day just fantasizing about violence. I think you'd be freaked out. I think that would be kind of a strange thing to admit. But in a way, that's what we do. Like, we spend hours a day just fantasizing about these violent scenarios.
So
maybe I'm the only one that worries about that. I don't know.
When you say it, we fantasize about it, do you mean it in terms of we're just thinking about it, or we're thinking about it with an ounce of pleasure in it.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction, because that's part of what my research led me to, is that, why do we make moral choices in games? There are loads of games where we're allowed to make moral choices. There are loads of games that allow us to do all sorts of things. How do we go about the process of making choices in games? Sometimes we make those choices just strategically, like I kill this person in the game because I get some loot out of it, or I get a strategic advantage. Sometimes morality really has nothing to do with my choices. Sometimes we do bad things in games just because we're experimenting, just because I want to see what the mechanics of the game do and how it works. But I think there are some cases where we make a choice or we do something in a game actually because we want to see it done. And those are the cases that really interest me. So, Jay, you brought up the idea of when we fantasize. We could fantasize in the sense that we're just thinking about it. And I think that happens an awful lot, like when I'm playing a game and I'm taking some strategic pleasure in whatever it is. But then there are cases where I use the game to fantasize, where I'm really invested in the character and I really connect to the character in some way. And it matters to me how this character's choices are made, how their life plays out. And those are cases where I think it gets more interesting.
So we talked about a couple of the games. When you're going and doing the actual research, how did you go about doing it? And, what types of games did you look at?
I'm kind of boring. I tend to look at... When I look at the specific games I look at, tend to be the ones that get a lot of media attention. So when there's a debate about, violence in video games, the kind of games that pop up in those sort of debates tend to be the AAA games. So I tend to focus my attention on those just because they're the ones that so many people talk about and worry about. And I feel bad about that, because I'm sure there's loads of great indie stuff out there that I'm not seeing. But I tend to take that really kind of boring approach of just focusing on the stuff that gets a lot of media attention with that debate. So when I actually go out playing, I try to play as much as I can, but I can't possibly play everything. So a lot of times instead of directly playing a game, I'll just rely on watching a YouTuber play the game, and I get the sense of what sort of decisions and scenarios you go through in the game that way. Because sometimes I can't play, I can't spend 80 hours researching one game to find out that I'm not actually going to use this in my research.
It's research. I
should be able to write it off.
It's for the betterment of education.
Yeah. I keep telling my wife it's for research, and she kind of like, sure it is.
Yeah. I do the same thing. Mine doesn't fall for it after 15 years either, so it's all good. So. And that trust me, there's plenty of ethical things that we can get into just in the AAA world. So, I'm assuming GTA was on the list.
Oh yeah, sure. GTA is on the list. I actually thought Red Dead Redemption was a bit more interesting than GTA on this. It was like one day, one of my colleagues, another professor in my department, the guy that you met, Jay.
Yeah.
He and I were playing Red Dead at about the same time, and he told me that he discovered this thing everybody now knows about, where you can hog tie villagers to the railroad tracks and watch trains run them over. And of course, as soon as he said that, I ran home and tried it. Of course. But that was an interesting case where I wondered, why do I want to do this? Like, I was motivated to do it because I wanted to see how the mechanic works. You also get a trophy from it. You get the Dastardly Trophy. So if you're a completionist and you want to collect every single trophy, that's something you have to do in the game to collect the trophy. But I'm more interested in, imagine a person who actually takes some kind of pleasure from that they sit down at the game and do that over and over again, just watching villagers get run over by trains. That would freak me out. That would make me wonder, well, why are you doing that? I mean, yes, it's a fantasy. Yes, nobody is harmed by it. Yes, it's just fiction.
I would just want to see how many villages I could line up on the tracks before the train ran them over.
Yes, yeah. I mean, certainly an option too, but that's not the kind of case I'm talking about. Like, imagine somebody who actually is doing this repeatedly because they get some weird pleasure from it. They freak me out.
Well, we're not 100% certain that Indy doesn't get a weird pleasure out of it.
There you go. Oh. I think I tried actually that once, like how many villagers can I get on the tracks? And I found that when I came back, they were gone. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they let themselves go, or maybe they just disappear. I don't know.
Nah, it's where that whole Lone Ranger dude shows up and like rescues them while you're out working on your evil plan. That's the
That's possible too. Yeah.
So what have you seen? What's the results that you've had pop up? And we've already got a couple of questions queuing up as well too. So
cool. Okay. The thing that I'm interested in is like when we have debates about violence in video games, we usually talk about this in a really kind of consequentialist way. The way that we talk about it is that violence in video games doesn't cause any kind of real world violence, so that should be the end of the problem. We should have nothing left to talk about because there's no real connection to real world violence. But that doesn't explain why sometimes I'm hesitant to do something in a game, or why sometimes I feel bad about it after the fact. That's the kind of thing that I really want to get at. So what I discover, not really discovered, but what I'm arguing is that there are often these cases where I identify with my avatar, where the avatar I see as some kind of extension of me in the game. That doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And when it does, the moral choices that I make become a lot more meaningful to me. They kind of represent my own view of myself in the game. What it does is it offers me a way of representing my own moral values or my own moral character in this fictional world. So I attribute a whole bunch of value and meaning to what I'm doing because I see it as this extension of myself in this world. And interestingly, it's a world where my actions have no other consequences. So I kind of have this freedom to explore what I really value and what I really care about. I can't be the only person who does that in games. Like, surely somebody else does this.
For me, it's about like exploring things that I wouldn't normally do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now that I'm thinking about it, when I first getting my granddaughter Izzy to play Minecraft, we would like burn people, or we would get as many animals as we could on leashes, and then we'd float up in the air and then let them go.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Because why not?
Because why not? Because it's fun. Or like as many chickens as you possibly can, and then blow them up with TNT or something.
Yeah. I recently played the Untitled
Is that bad?
game.
Does that make me a bad person?
No, I think what you're doing is experimenting. Experimentation makes perfect sense.
I know, but she was like 6 years old, and we're sitting there laughing about it.
When Ethan started playing, I mean, he was 5 or 6, and every time we find a village, my first thing is, okay, let's fence it off so they don't get turned into zombies. Not because I'm a nice guy, basically because I needed merchants to sell shit to get. And if they were all zombies, then they couldn't be merchants. Whereas his first thing was, I'm going to go in and kill them all and take their houses. And I'm like, what? You're like,
how did that occur to you at 5?
That's so. I mean, this is exactly it. It's like where does it come from?
Yeah.
Does it mean we're bad people?
That actually reminds me. So we're playing Minecraft, right? And it was like a dog or a sheep or something, and I'm like, well, let's just kill it. It's like the first time, and so I kill it, and she's like, no, don't kill it.
Yeah.
She got all upset, and then as soon as I killed it, the next thing she did is she walked up and started killing all the animals and laughing about it.
That's awesome. When I play a game that I really love is Horizon Zero Dawn, I play it I replay it every 6 months or so. And whenever I do, I have a 7-year-old daughter. She loves to watch me play, and she gets so upset anytime I shoot a rabbit. there are bunny rabbits running around and I need them for meat. And anytime I kill one of the rabbits, she's like, Daddy, I can't believe you killed a rabbit.
Funny.
But other games, she cheers me on.
But it's sad because it's a bunny, huh? She loves the bunny.
It's the bunny, yeah. If I'm playing Shadow of Mordor, she cheers me on. Good job chopping off that orc's head, Daddy. And I often think, you poor little... Yeah, they're not cute. They're not rabbits.
That's the whole thing there. All right, so I got to scroll up because we got a lot going on here in chat.
Oh, cool.
Can we talk about this war of mine? What we were talking about before the stream started?
Oh yeah. All right, so we had a conversation going, and we stopped it so we wouldn't
Right. So my thing was like with this war of mine, I had always played it. This was like the weird turning point for me. I think I'd always played it as good, but then one time I'm just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna be bad. So in this war of mine, you're like in war-torn Europe or whatever. So I go to a church and there's a priest, and I know that there's like an old couple underneath. So instead of saving the priest, I just kill the priest, and then I just go down where all the people are hiding, and then I just kill all the people. Like there's an old couple, and that was like the turning point, because I had always played games like sort of with my morals, except for some certain situations, but this was like the turning point where I just played the whole game as a not good person.
Yep.
And
how'd you feel about it?
I felt pretty good.
Good.
So
actually, that's an important thing. Like, one of the things that I think is valuable about video games is that you do get to go through this process of moral imagining, where you try out ideas that you otherwise wouldn't have a chance to try out. Part of what we do when we make moral decisions is we have to weigh up consequences, and I don't really know what the consequences are if I never experience the darker side of my consequences. So one of the things that games allow us to do is to explore that. Moral exploration is a perfectly good reason to do a bad thing in a game.
Right, so
don't feel bad about that.
Well, I don't feel bad about it anymore. So the other thing we were talking about during when Arma 2, it was like after it first became like a not battle royale, but everyone could just run around and kill each other, and it was rare to see more than groups of 2 or 3 people running around together. So I had logged in, I was streaming, I had logged in one day, and my client didn't update, so I was like one version behind in the game. So I'm running around in the game, and I was like, I think I was playing with someone. I'm like, can't you see me? And I was right standing next to him, but they couldn't see me. So I realized that I was invisible in the game. So I was running around, and I came upon this group of like 20 people, and they were all in a barn, and they were standing around talking. I couldn't hear people either. That was the thing. I couldn't hear, So they were standing around talking. So I shot a gun a couple times, and they looked around. And then I just decided that I would just kill them all. So I just started shooting them, right? And they just started dying, and they were just looking around like, where's this coming from? Where's this coming from? So I just killed them all, and then started taking all of their stuff. And then I noticed that they would come back to try and get their stuff. So when they come running up, I would let them get close, and then I would just kill them. And then after that, I decided I'm just going to bury their bodies, because you could bury their bodies and they would sink, and then they could never get their stuff back.
Oh, wow.
So all of these people, because it takes a while to grind to get gear, right? They all had all this awesome gear. And then I was just, after I did this for about an hour, laughing my ass off, I'm like, man, that was fucked up. That's like against terms of Twitch, terms of service. It was totally griefing. And so I just I'm done, you guys. I stopped the stream. I uninstalled the game, and I didn't play it for like 6 months. Because
wow, you felt really bad about that.
I did feel bad.
But that's a good analogy. At what point?
And I hope I don't get banned on Twitch for talking about that. But that I did that. But it was years ago. There's not even a VOD of it anymore.
Yeah, we'll have a new producer.
I mean, an interesting thing about that is that it's a multiplayer game,
right?
And in that case, you actually do have moral duties to other real people that are on the other side of the game. So you have the duty of sportsmanship. And maybe you feel bad because that was unsportsmanly or something like that.
Right.
But what about in single-player games where there are no other people that you have any kind of sportsmanship duties to?
I don't care.
Yeah, then you don't care.
I don't care at all.
See,
I enjoy it, right? I mean,
like the nice guy in the group. It's like I did not play a lot of Zelda games growing up. I didn't have consoles. I've been a PC gamer since I was like 5. I got my first console when the PlayStation came out to play Gran Turismo. So I didn't play all the Zelda games growing up. And I have a good friend in the industry who to this day says I should not be allowed to be in the industry because I had never played a Zelda game. But I played it when it came out. When we got a Switch, I played Breath of the Wild. And my son played Breath of the Wild. And he's got a ridiculous amount of hours in it. He has loved the game. But one thing that I noticed he would do is once he figured out that the vases were breakable and there were rupees in them, he would go in and break them everywhere. And I'm sitting back going, dude, that's somebody's house. And I don't even know why I got that excited. I mean, why I felt like that. But I could not bring myself. I didn't feel right going into this NPC's house and breaking their shit just to get rupees. And I can't explain why. You know, it's just one of those things. Like I didn't think it was right. But that kind of, I mean, it makes me wonder, where are your moral obligations in multiplayer games? Because it's like, if it's especially if it's a PvP game, then yeah, you know, you're not cheating. It's a creative use of game mechanics. Now, in Indy's case, you were cheating.
Oh, that was straight up cheating for sure.
Do you guys? I'm sure you know about the World of Warcraft funerary raid. Do you remember that one? Mm-mm. Okay, World of Warcraft 2006. There was a guild called. There's the Horde, and then there's Serenity Now. So the Horde had an actual real-life member die in real life.
Oh, I know.
It sounds familiar now? Okay, so Horde member dies in real life, and in the game, the Horde members decide to hold a memorial service to this member in the game. But they hold the memorial service in an area outside of a city where it's contested land. It's by some lake. I don't know why. And then a rival guild, Serenity Now, realizes that all of the Horde members are at this memorial service without their weapons, without their armor. So they raid the funeral, kill all of them, and take their loot. And that, you know, sparked this big debate about whether that was cheating, whether it was unsportsmanly, whether that was actually somehow wrong in the game.
That's definitely not sportsmanlike.
Right, it's not sportsmanlike. They didn't cheat in the sense that they didn't break the code of the game. They didn't get an unfair advantage. They did something. You know, what can you say about it? They attacked another team that had declared we're not playing right now.
Well, it's kind of like if you know there's a holiday or you know. There's a group of people in church and you're like, let's bomb those people. You know, they're in church. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, imagine if the funerary raid in World of Warcraft happened in real life. In real life, that would be a war crime.
Yeah.
That would have been, you know, obviously not okay. Even in an active war, that would have been a war crime. So what do we think about it in a game? In a game, it's more complicated because, of course, we all recognize this is fiction. It's not real. But at the same time, it's kind of real in one sense. Like the Horde members who lost all their loot, they lost a whole bunch of time and energy and effort that they put into collecting that loot that was lost.
As someone who had 10 plus years of time invested in World of Warcraft, I can only say that's what you have to expect out of Alliance trash. You know, that's just, you know,
the Horde has the superior moral high ground.
Damn Alliance, you know, that's the problem.
For the Horde.
Do you see, you know, in the games that you looked at, do you see situations where the developers build in some ethics and morality, because Nightwolf brought up a point. Hold on, I'm scrolling way the hell up in chat here.
Well, it's kind of like the GTA developers built in non-morals. I mean, I played GTA. I played like for hours where I just running people over. Literally, just how many ways can I kill people? How many people can I kill at once?
Part of that is because those cars are very hard to control.
Right.
In GTA 4, there's a part of Liberty City, I'm sure everybody knows it, there's this long boulevard road that goes up a hill, and at the top of the hill is a rotary. It's like a park. I absolutely love flying up that hill and seeing if I can jump the car over the park, and I always land into a pile of people. There's something wrong with me, I know. But actually, so when you ask about building morals into the game, a really interesting case to look at is the difference between GTA and Red Dead Redemption. It's interesting mainly because it's, they're from the same developer. But they actually codify actions in the game differently depending on which game you're talking about. So think of in GTA San Andreas. So you have a morality meter where you gain respect of your colleagues or of your gang members. If you do, bad things in the game, you get more respect, and your gang members are more willing to follow you. In Red Dead Redemption, it's not respect, it's an honor meter, so you can do honorable or dishonorable things. But there's actually like a really subtle difference between those concepts. Respect is not really a moral concept. You can gain respect for all sorts of reasons. Honor, on the other hand, actually is a moral concept. So Red Dead Redemption kind of subtly suggests how you're supposed to act. You're supposed to value honor, while GTA doesn't tell you how you're supposed to act. All you're supposed to do is gain respect, and you can do that by doing bad things as well. Yeah. So both of those games actually inherently kind of subtly suggest how you're supposed to act in the world. They've already built values into it.
All right, so, and I haven't played the latest Red Dead. I will confess that right up front.
Well, so what Nightwolf said, vampire rewards killing your close friends and those you connected with most.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's kind of the distinction that gets interesting, because even if you're talking about honor versus respect, the first thing I think of is the series that was on AMC called Hell on Wheels. And it was all about post-Civil War expansion following this railroad that was being constructed, out west. But the main character in there was a ex-Confederate cavalry soldier, and the whole series starts out with him systematically killing and assassinating, ex-Union soldiers who were a member of some regiment or group or whatever that killed his family or friends. I can't remember who they killed, but he was after them. Mm-hmm. In that type of situation, where does the honor come in? Because it would be honorable for a lot of that population. They would look at him as doing something honorable. He is avenging his fallen friends and family, whereas on the legal side of things and the stereotypical honor, it's not. He's just basically an assassin. So in Red Dead, whose version of honor are you after? Because you could be very honorable in GTA to your gang because you went out and systematically killed out another gang. They would look at that as honorable, whereas the regular city folk in there aren't going to. So in that definition between respect and honor, whose honor are you going by?
Yeah, that's a good case. So in the GTA case, it's the respect that you're trying to earn is the respect of your gang members. You're not trying to earn any kind of like broader societal respect. But when Red Dead Redemption uses honor as their moral system, that seems like the kind of actions that are honorable are actions that are like pro-social. The ones that were the actions that are socially accepted are the honorable ones. Dishonorable actions are ones that are socially unacceptable. So they're using honor as this much broader social concept rather than respect, which is a very individual concept that's located with the group. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, because it is, and that's where it comes down to, the developers and how things are coded in. Mm-hmm. Who said I'm doing good? Who says I'm doing bad? Alongside, because you and I talked about Skyrim as well, and you ask, because I have probably thousands of hours in it, and we were talking about the faction that you choose, and I told you I had never chosen the Romans,
the Imperials.
Yes, yeah. I always choose the Stormcloaks, but even in that scenario, you would have two different versions of honor and morally right. Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
So when you were, because that was one of the games that you looked at as well. Why did you see one side choosing one or the other?
Oh yeah, so I know what you mean. So by the way, I'm on your side on this. When I play Skyrim, I always choose the Stormcloaks as well. But what I think is really interesting is the reason why a person chooses the Stormcloaks. Like, what's fascinating to me about games is that you can dig into an individual's psychology when you look at how we make choices in games and what things motivate us to do whatever it is that we do in games. So there are lots of reasons to side with the Stormcloaks. Like, for one, they're not Imperials, right? Another reason to side with the Stormcloaks is that they promote this idea of religious freedom, right? They're the religion of Talos in the game, right? So if you, generally have like anti-imperialist feelings, or if you think religious freedom is a good thing, those are reasons to side with the Stormcloaks. And those are probably morally good reasons to side with the Stormcloaks. But the other thing about the Stormcloaks, which makes them tricky, is that they also project this really like race nationalist, like a very white nationalist view of Skyrim. Like, Skyrim is for the Nords. And that's actually one of the things about the Stormcloaks that makes me really anxious. Like, on the one hand, yes, I don't like the Imperials, and religious freedom is a good thing, but when it sounds really white nationalist what they're saying, then I feel like I don't know that I really want to side with these people. What's really interesting, like, imagine a player who, the player who sides with the Stormcloaks because you have anti-imperialist feelings. That was a good choice. They made a good choice in the game. But imagine a player who sides with the Stormcloaks because they really are white nationalists. Like, they really do feel some kind of race anxiety.
My God, this sounds like politics today.
I know, right? Crazy. Like, imagine a player who sides with the Stormcloaks for that reason, even though these two players did the same thing. They both sided with the Stormcloaks. Their moral reasons for doing so are totally different. And I would say one of them made a good moral choice and the other one didn't.
Wow.
Those are the cases that I think are interesting to dig into. It's not really what you do in the game is not all that interesting. What's more interesting is why you did it. Like, what was the thought process that led you to that?
And that's where it can get like really dark. So Indy, what thought process led you to, cheat and kill all those people and then bury their shit and not let them?
Oh, that was strategy, right?
No, that wasn't strategy. That was like, oh my God, I can do this. This is awesome, and they can't see me. Fuck these guys. And then
it's moral exploration. You just
I was laughing, and then it felt really good, and then after a while I was like, holy shit. This is not good at all. I don't want to be this person. I'm totally against.
Eventually, you did feel bad about it.
Yeah, I'm like, I am totally against people that do this kind of thing. You know what I mean? People that grieve. But here I am doing it and laughing. That's why I literally immediately uninstalled the game and I didn't touch it it was really like 6 months, maybe even more.
Wow. So it's not like you just felt bad and shut the game off and went and had a coffee, but like you uninstalled the game. Yeah. You felt that bad about it.
Right. It was weird. Wow. It was a weird thing.
He was trying to erase the evidence of his evil.
Yeah. Erase I know. I did not delete the VOD or anything. But I've got friends that play Conan, and they will go and, you know, build and block off areas so you can't get to them, or, you know, they will capture people, because there's a lot of servers that you can play, you know, where you can just capture people and then put them in a cage and then keep them there. And then there's people that I know that get off on that kind of stuff, where I don't know, I could see that it has something to do with getting energy, right? You know, you get energy when you interact with people, you get energy, right? You're nice to people, you feel like this good energy. Well, there's other people that do bad things that you know, they're like psychic vampires is what I call them, where they just suck your energy, you know, and I feel that's kind of what it is. You gain energy by sucking other people's energy.
Well, that's the griefer, that's the troll,
right? So they're over there laughing. It's like the people that comes into the stream and you know, calls me fat or something, and then they think that, oh yeah, I'm gonna suck this dude's energy, and then I turn it around and be like, you take the most obvious thing about me and just say you're fat. That's like that hasn't been said to me 1,000 times before, and then I like suck their energy back and then make them feel that big, and then they leave. You know.
So, do the choices that we make in games, what does that tell us about our internal, our actual morals? And does it differ between, because you brought up the fact that, you know, single player game versus MMOs, where, from your standpoint, from the philosophy standpoint, what does it say about us? And the next level of that down is, how is it different between things? Is it okay to do it when you're just in a single player game versus
all I know, Jay, is I want to come over to your house and smash one of your vases and take some of your gems.
Yeah, right.
That's why I don't leave my rupees in vases.
Don't leave them in a vase. It's an obvious place now.
Right.
Everybody's going to look in the vase. So the first thing to mention is that obviously we make choices in games for really complicated reasons. Sometimes it's strategic, sometimes it's moral exploration, but sometimes it's not. And I am really interested in, you know, when are those cases when it's not, or those cases where you feel guilty about it after the fact. There are some theorists and philosophers and psychologists who take a really strict amoralist view. The strict amoralist is somebody who says that games are nothing more than games. There's nothing you can do in a game that's ever wrong because you're just playing a game. So people make choices in games for reasons that have to do with the strategy or the fun or the experimentation, and they don't make choices for any genuine moral reason. And I think that's probably not true. I think sometimes we do, and you can see that in those cases where we feel guilty. On the other extreme, you have philosophers who are like strict moralists. They think that all of the choices that we make in games have some evidence, offer some evidence about our values or our moral character. And I think that's probably not true either. Sometimes I do just play games for fun, and there really is nothing more to it than fun. So what I try to defend is a more moderate view. The moderate view is that choices we make in games can offer evidence about the things that I actually value or my actual moral character, but it has to be under the right circumstances.
Both know
so
you're Nazi.
On my view, the real philosophical debate here is about what circumstances does it matter? Like, under what circumstances does it make a moral difference? And for me, as I've said before, it's when I identify with the avatar. When the avatar is something I strongly identify with and I endorse the avatar's actions, then I think I'm revealing to you something about my actual moral values. To give you an example, and this is, apologies to your listeners, this is a dark example, but there's a debate.
Our listeners will be fine, I assure you.
Yeah, right. There's a debate in philosophy about something called the gamer's dilemma, and it's this idea developed by another philosopher. His name's Morgan Luck, a really interesting guy, and his point is that when we defend violence in games, usually we use, there's a standard argument people use that there's nothing morally wrong with doing violent things in games because it's all fictional. But if you take that inference there's nothing morally wrong with violence in games because it's all fictional. I should be able to generalize that. I should be able to generalize that and use it as a defense of doing absolutely anything I want in a game. So what about a game that gives me the option to be racist? Or what about a game that gives me the option to commit genocide? Or even worse, what about a game that gives me the option to commit an act of pedophilia? Imagine a pedophilia video game. We should be able to defend that on the grounds that, well, it's fictional. Nobody's actually harmed. But at that point, people feel deeply uncomfortable. So the gamer's dilemma is the idea that there's no moral difference really between any kind of fictional actions, whether we're talking about murder in a game or whether we're talking about pedophilia in a game, because they're fictional. So then either I have to admit that all of them are morally permissible because they're all fictional, or I have to admit that all of them are not morally permissible, even though they're fictional. The third option is that I have to come up with some morally relevant reason why virtual murder is permissible, but virtual pedophilia is not permissible. And Morgan Luck thinks that that is impossible. At least he used to think it's impossible. I think he's changing his mind about that now. But the gamer's dilemma is a great case. So if it's really okay for me to do anything I want in a game, well, what about virtual pedophilia? And keep in mind, this is, if we're talking about single player games where there is no other person, there are no duties of sportsmanship, you can't possibly
and it's
steal
just a digital image. It's not anything.
Right. Can you do anything you want to digital images and be completely morally free? So that's what the debate is about.
That's a question that will never ever be answered.
Oh, well, no. We're going to answer it.
No,
we're going to answer it right now? Are we answering it right now?
To the government and we get a giant grant to figure this out.
Right.
You don't need a giant grant. It's chapter 6 of my book. Sorry about that.
If we want to get paid, we do.
Hey, do you got a link? Do you have a link to Chris's book? Can you link it? Do you have a link to your book?
Yes, I think I sent it to.
Put it in our our Discord chat, Andy.
Div says the answer is it's where you draw the line in the sand.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I do think it is where you draw the line in the sand. What is it that makes you draw the line here rather than there? Like, how would you spell out what that line is in more detail? Because how would we do it? Like, clearly, I don't want to say that virtual murder in a game is wrong. That's most of what I do in games is virtual murder. But I also want to say virtual pedophilia is clearly wrong. So is it nothing more than just my moral feelings? Is it just I happen to draw the line here rather than there?
And yeah, because you know what? You were talking about racism, right? Can you be racist in games? There's a lot of games where they're like, we hate those fucking elves. You know what I mean? And that's, or there's, where you will play, where people role play as a racist character in a game. And, racism obviously is bad and wrong and stupid, but to do it in a game, is it morally wrong?
Yeah. I mean, do you know, this is an awful one, but do you know a game called Ethnic Cleansing?
I've heard of that.
I've heard of it too,
Yeah, it's developed by a white power record label. It's Resistance Records.
Yeah.
So they really mean it. Like, in the game, you're a white...
This is not an allegory.
It's not an allegory. In the game, you're playing as a white race warrior, and you have to massacre African Americans and then Hispanics and then Jews in the game. And we could stop and say, oh, but it's all fictional, so what's morally wrong? But at the same time, clearly there's something morally wrong here.
Right.
Like,
so why
fictional,
so what's weird is, why does that feel so much more wrong than the game like Hatred, where you just fucking murder everybody? What is the thing that makes it? I was like, oh, well, I'm just like, or in GTA 5, I'm just murdering everybody. Oh, but if I target, black people or whatever, if I target somebody of a different race, then that just feels worse.
Yeah. So there are some philosophers who argue exactly that the problem is targeting. Like there are some philosophers who argue that what's wrong in these cases is that it's targeted violence. I don't think that's exactly right, because I actually do think that there are some players who play hatred who probably are twisted about it.
Right. Hatred is not even that bad of a game. They just promoted it to be this terrible thing. It's not really even that bad. Sure, it's murdering people, but it's like, it's not.
Yeah. I think the difference is, like, with a game like Ethnic Cleansing, there is no moral story you can tell yourself in your head about how what you're doing is noble and right and okay.
But there are people, but that's the problem. The people that
this is a problem with life, man.
Oh, I know. But the people that made that game are telling themselves a moral story that it's okay.
Yeah, there's something behind the murders. Where, like, in hatred, you're just, like, murdering randomly just because you want to. So is it worse to just murder everyone just because, that's what you do? Or is it worse to murder people because they're different?
Yeah.
Good Lord. Now my brain is exploding right now.
Isn't there a big difference, though, in what motivates you to commit these murders? Right. In the case of GTA, where I just kill everybody randomly, I'm doing it for random fun. In the case of Ethnic Cleansing, this isn't random. This is very targeted.
Or unless it's a hooker in GTA that you take around the corner, bounce in your car, and then let her out and then kill her.
Yeah. Imagine a person who plays GTA who only murders hookers or only murders African Americans in the game. Like, that person probably has problems. That person is probably not doing this for innocent reasons. Like, that might indicate something about their moral character.
All right, so let's take the morals to the next step. Given the level of analytics that we have in games now,
oh yeah,
could we identify people like that, and then, and we're talking like some serious Orwellian shit here, but
yeah.
Could we identify people who did that, and then they go on some sort of secret FBI, CIA watch list along the lines of what China's been doing in terms of their moral scoreboard, basically?
Wait, there's a moral scoreboard?
That I don't know if they've actually implemented it yet, but there is talks. I mean, I've heard about it where each citizen is going to have basically like a citizenship score.
It's like some Black Mirror shit is what it is.
Oh, I've heard of the citizenship score, yeah.
And if there will actually be things you're not allowed to do. Like, you won't be able to get a better seat on a train if your score isn't, high enough, that sort of stuff.
I'll be interested to see how people game the system, because it's a game. You've got to be able to find the way to game the system.
Did you ever see that Black Mirror episode that was just like that? Oh, where everyone like gave each other social scores, and everyone was just fake as fuck, and they're like, "Hi," and then it's like, "I'm going to give you 5 stars," and then they just, it was a good episode.
Cool. Okay.
So I mean, is it possible that we can get to that point? Because the question of like where that line in the sand gets drawn, to me, that's just all a cultural thing. It's going to vary from culture to culture. Some things are right. In some cultures, some things are absolutely not right in others, and it can be the very same stuff on 2 different ends of the spectrum. So are we leading to a situation where we're going to be set up like that? And so, wait, Rachel, you said Japan is doing it. Explain that. Japan is doing what?
That is Rochelle, not Rachel.
Rochelle, sorry. My bad.
Japan is doing what? That sounds interesting.
She just chimed in and said Japan's doing it.
I mean, to be clear, I don't want to live in an Orwellian world. I'm not trying to defend the idea that this Orwellian, there would be a great thing if we could all track each other and, watch our morals on games. I'm not interested. I'm definitely not interested in that. I'm really just interested in the philosophical question of whether it's ever morally wrong for me to do something in a game, or is it ever morally wrong for me to fantasize about immoral things? Right. That's a broader philosophical question that I find really interesting, and I hope nobody ever implements this into like Orwellianly tracking people.
I can guarantee you somebody has already.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
And it's more like, you know, things that are morally wrong, like God, my brain is exploding right now from all the stuff you're saying. It's like what's with the game House Party, where you're in a house party and your whole point is just to have sex with it can have sex with a guy or girl or whatever, but you can literally like pull your dick out and stick it in people's faces in the game, right?
But can you roofie somebody?
I don't know. Not that I'm aware of.
In the game, is it always consensual?
The sex is consensual, yeah. Except for when you can take your dick out and stick it right in people's faces. They just go, get that out of here, and then you can still stand there with it waving in their face. So that might not be consensual.
Yeah, right. Well, damn. That's...
I mean, it's a conundrum. I mean, you know what I mean? You can slap the women in that game. You can't slap the women. Oh, I guess you can fight some people.
Mm-hmm. There's a game, I've never played it. I heard another researcher talking about it, so this is all secondhand from me. There's a game called Socialatron. It's an MMO, and it's a game where you can commit acts of rape in the game. You can force other players in the game into sex, and it's you don't have to get consent. Unlike a game like Second Life, where the sex in the game is typically consensual, unless you cheat, unless you break the.
But I
game.
mean, if you're already playing a game where you know that you can have non-consensual sex, you're already kind of consenting to it.
Right, yeah. And that's something that, like, on Socialatron's website, when you log on, there's this disclaimer of, like, when you enter the space, you know what's going to happen, and you can't really complain about it because you know what's going to happen before you enter. So in a way, you have this, like, weirdly tacit consent. I think there's a deeper moral question you could ask there about whether it's whether there are some things that nobody can really consent to reasonably, but that's, you know, I really don't know what to say about that. It's an interesting question.
So with all of this in mind, obviously our audience are the developers themselves. How can developers make some of these make as you mentioned meaningful moral choices while they're creating the games?
Yeah, for me, I think the main thing is that for players, they need to feel like something is at stake. There are some moral choices in games where I don't feel like anything's at stake, and I really feel like this is just an A-B choice. I can close my eyes and just press a button, and it doesn't really matter to me which choice I make. But when I feel like there's something at stake, that's what's important. And from a game design point of view, I'm sure there's loads of ways to do it. There isn't like one magic bullet way of developing a good moral choice in games. There are loads of ways of doing it. An example would be, and this is a funny example because there's something I like about the example, but also something that I don't. An example is the moral choices in Bioshock Infinite. When they developed, when Bioshock Infinite was developed, the game designers wanted to take consequence out of moral choice. So what typically happens in a game is you make a moral choice between saving one character and saving another, but that has a strategic, it's often tied to strategic goals. Like you save one character and you get a certain kind of power or loot or whatever, or some kind of tactical advantage. And if you save another character, you don't get that tactical advantage or whatever. And that becomes that is kind of a muddied moral choice because it's not clear that you're making the choice for moral reasons or if you're just making the choice for strategic, tactical reasons. So Bioshock Infinite, they wanted to take out the strategy, the tactical gaming for moral choices. And the moral choices that you make there are actually kind of consequence-free. And that's really interesting, because when it's consequence-free, you do have this option to explore possibilities that otherwise you wouldn't explore if they were tied to consequences. So that's a good idea. But there are cases where it really doesn't work. Like really early in the game is that scene where there's an interracial couple and they're being stoned in public. They're being stoned to death in public. And you have the option to either throw a stone at them or decry this racism and save them. And when I was playing the game the first time through and I got to that point, I was just stunned that I could make this choice. Like, it was a consequence-free choice. It didn't have any strategic value in the game. I could go either way, but I was shocked at, like, so wait a minute, I can side with the fascists? That's not a moral choice I want to make. That was actually a case where there was nothing at stake for me because it wasn't a genuine option. It wasn't genuinely an option that I would side with the fascists and throw a rock at this couple, because why the hell would I do that? So on the one hand, I think it's important to make moral choices where we feel like something is at stake. It doesn't have to be strategic. It can be. I'm sure there is a way of making interesting moral choices that are divorced from strategy or the game playing aspect of the game, like Bioshock Infinite was trying to do. But that particular case, I think, itself doesn't really work.
So, and we're getting close to our time on this anyway. And I don't want to keep you because you're like, you have a real job and you're not like Dan and I.
Well, more importantly, my kid is looking at me because she wants lunch. But
well, that's a good point too. So here's my question. If we were to give you some homework to go and because we've had several of these games that have come up, people have mentioned in chat as well. Some of them I haven't even played myself. Would you be open to playing them? And, in a couple of months, however long it takes, come back and let's have this discussion again.
Oh, that would be really cool. Okay. Yeah.
Because I really want to see how you look at some of this stuff from the indie games as well. Because it's like I said when we had breakfast the other day, it's the indie teams are the ones who have more options to push this stuff.
I'm sure there's an awful lot more freedom because you're not tied into the business structure of the AAA games, so you can actually explore much more interesting and diverse themes that, yeah, I would totally be into that.
All right, cool. So let's plan on that. So if you're listening and you're on our Discord, post it up in the chat if you've got ideas, recommendations for games. I mean, I want to try Death and Taxes that someone mentioned in chat. This War of Mine, obviously, and the other one. What's the other one? Papers, Please.
Papers, Please is great. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean. Dude, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
This is fun. And
that was a really good conversation. Now my brain is blown.
Now you feel bad, Andy.
Yeah. No, I don't feel bad. I'm going to go do some morally questionable things right now, so.
Get it out of your system.
Right. I mean, it's Friday. Yeah. It's Friday, and I have like a half gallon and a little bit more of Jack Daniels sitting there on the counter, so. Oh, you just realized who Rochelle was?
Yes, I did. Just
that's why I'm all. It's Rochelle, not Rachel.
This War of Mine. I haven't played it all the way through, but I have played this War of Mine a little bit.
I want you to play this War of Mine, but play it with the mindset that you're going to do bad things only.
Okay. All right.
I'm telling Jay to do that too. Just play it with you're going to do bad things only. If they're like, do you want to save this person? Kill them. Just try it.
All right.
Just try it. Even do it for like an hour.
I'll try it.
Jay's gonna come back and he's gonna have like his everything will be shaved and he'll have like the evil goatee. You know what I mean? Yeah. His hair will be all slicked back.
Tattoos on my face.
Tattoos on his hands.
Well, Dr. Bartel,
thank you so
very
much, man. This was awesome.
Thank you.
for coming, and let me know when you're back up here again. We're gonna grab some more coffee.
Awesome.
Yep. And
Talk to you
so
later.
you guys, we are on twitch.tv, Mixer, LinkedIn, everything is Indie Game Business, and also anchor.fm/Indie Game Business to catch all of the podcasts. And do we want to talk about what's coming up, Jay?
Sure, yeah. All right, so yeah, next Friday, I don't know what we have next Wednesday, but next Friday, we are actually going to be doing some live feedback sessions on pitches and on games. So I know a lot of folks have PAX coming up next weekend and then GDC's in a few weeks. But we're going to, we've already had some submissions. If you want us to do this for your pitch, hit me up on Discord.
Yeah.
But we're going to be doing that. And then next Wednesday, who have we got?
Discord.gg/Indie Game Business.
Yes. So we've got a guest next Wednesday. I've got to remember what. We have something. My brain's not working right now. We have a guest next Wednesday.
We got a guest. We're gonna talk about some stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent.
So, all right.
Thanks so much.
Everybody.
Have a great one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.